My name is Vincent Lambe. I'm an Academy Award nominee from 2019, but today I'm here with the cast and crew of Champ. It was the first film I watched here, and it was great. I mean, it's so powerful. It kind of stayed with me for a while and made, a lot of the others seem a bit bland. But really
Thank you.
beautifully made film.
That's always nice to hear.
So Ben, right, let's start with you. I mean, how did this start for you? How did this come about?
It's a long story. I'll try and keep it short, but James had originally written a short script called A Young Man's Game, which I found and read, I think it was 2019, early 2019. And I reached out to James, told him how much I loved the script. And we started talking, I talked about how I'd love to help him make it, what his plans were for the film. And we ended up submitting it for the short screenplay fund, which it won, which gave us a little bit of funding and some sponsorship from RA to get us going, which was a huge, way to get short scripts. Yeah. It was a great way to get the ball rolling. Over the couple of years since that happened, the project's evolved and changed a little bit, notably because of the pandemic that happened last year that kind of derailed the production a couple of times. But to cut a long story short, it ended up making the film a lot better, made us rewrite it, and it transplanted it from the UK to the US. And the result is what you've all just seen.
You found the exact opposite of the UK in Lancaster, California.
Yes, we did. Yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, this started off with you, James, as Ben was saying, as a very different story. So tell us a bit about that and what inspired you to write the initial story.
The inspiration was that I had watched the short film Two Cars, One Night by Taika Waititi. And I really, really liked that sort of very tight and self-contained story that they managed to create there. And I just thought, how could I sort of do that kind of story and put my own twist on it? And I thought, okay, I want two people in a car having a conversation, but obviously that in itself isn't particularly interesting. So then I started to flesh out the idea and see, where that would take me. And it took about 4 days to write the original draft way back in early 2018. And still some of parts of that very early draft we can still see in the final version, but it has gone through a lot of changes since then.
Over the last few years, there's been so much talk about toxic masculinity and the Me Too movement and everything, and what's interesting about this film, it kind of looks at the roots of that, the mindset of it, so is that something that you guys felt strongly about, that you wanted to highlight?
It became a theme that came more and more to the surface as the story evolved and changed a little. And the story is very much the same as what James originally wrote. Obviously the sequence of events and how much of those characters we see is what evolved, and then eventually the setting changed. But at the core of it, it's still very much the same story. And this wonderful, unexpected ending, which is the thing that certainly the first time I read it grabbed me completely. And that in itself is sort of like the unexpected revelation of sort of potential outcome of this kind of toxic behavior on Danny's part in this script. And I think that became such an interesting way to kind of frame in the space of a short film, the situations of that kind of difficult relationship between a father and son, but then also the potentially devastating consequences of it.
So you said the script initially started as set out at a football field. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah,
UK?
It was set based in the UK, and it was they were parked up outside a football pitch, and that's where I originally saw it. It was very much kind of British screenplay when I wrote it, and then when we actually came to modify it, because we tried to film it a couple of times in the UK, and unfortunately, very last minute had to pull the plug because of the pandemic both times. my heart broke for Ben both of those times. And then when Ben suggested moving it to the US, then we sort of obviously went through the script and modified it and thought, well, how can we sort of transpose these ideas to a sort of, you know, an American setting? And actually, it worked out really fluidly. At first, I wasn't sure. I thought, but it's, you know, it was a very British idea. It's a very British script. I saw it all as very British in my mind. And the moment we started talking about it, the more excited I got and thought, wow, actually, there's so much more potential if we do sort of move it to this different setting. And looking at it now, I'm so glad that we did. It's so much more cinematic. It's such a better film, I think.
I think it's a beautiful film, and I think, you know, it's great that you persevered with it and kept trying to make it. But what an agonizing thing to go through. You got shut down twice, like with 2 lockdowns.
In hindsight, you know, now looking back on it, it really was the best thing that could have happened. It's an interesting situation that you can kind of look back and see that. Forcing you to go back and reevaluate the project and look at it from a different perspective, and having that time to do that allows you to see things that you perhaps didn't see the first time. And I do think we got a stronger film as a result of it. So I actually added
much better actors too.
much better actors. I mean, that goes without saying.
Well, that's great. So right, let's talk about. I mean, I saw a big part of.
God, let's talk about the actors.
Let's talk about the actors, for God's sake. Before we go to Drew, do you want to say a little word about the actors, Ben? I mean, what made you choose these guys? Because I think the performances, they feel so natural and real, and that's a big part of what makes the film work.
Yeah. I mean, for both, there was very specific qualities that I was looking for in filling those roles, and there was a lot of events when we came to the third round of actually shooting this film where things fell into a place in a really great way. You know, we really kind of, it felt like we were getting a little payback for some of the misfortune that we'd had, and things just clicked in. And I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate. They made my job a lot easier. They understood the scripts and understood the characters with a lot of depth, and brought everything that I was really looking for. And it was a blast working with them as well, you know, so it was awesome.
Drew, you play Danny, and right, you're a right piece of work, aren't you?
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about Danny and what that was like, playing that role.
Well, obviously I'm teasing. I will say though that what Ben was alluding to is there is some kismet about this film that just, you know, from the very beginning has seemed to really click, from, you know, getting Kingston to, you know, just the production, you know, Annika and her team, like everybody just, you know, Oren's beautiful, you know, beautiful lenses. It's just, there was just from top to bottom, just a great feeling about that. And I can honestly tell you that when I read the script the first time, you know, I haven't done a short film in a long time. And it was like, you know, I think you do it for 2 reasons: 1, script, and 2, director. And so the script was a no-brainer. And then as soon as I talked to Ben, it was like, oh, this guy, you know, I'll hitch my star to his wagon any day. So it was a no-brainer. And once we got started, you know, it was so much fun kind of creating the character. I think Ben wanted to keep Kingston and I apart from each other till the day, which I totally understand. But It was probably a good thing, because as soon as Kingston and I got together, we clicked right away. I mean, this kid is a star. And so It all clicked. You know, it just clicked from the beginning. And so it made the process fun and enjoyable.
So let's talk to Kingston here, because I think everybody wants to talk to Kingston, right? And your performance is just so utterly convincing. So congratulations.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I mean, tell us a bit about Jake then, and what's going through his mind. What do you think?
Jake, to me, is a very vulnerable person, and his relationship with his father is very deep to me, because I had that with my father too. And
really?
Yeah, and I talked to some of my friends too, and they're like, you know, that really touched a spot for me, because some of them went through that, you know? So I always love to perform and do things that touch other people because it's happened to them, you know? So this is a very special role to me as well, because coming back from COVID, actually never done a short film. And this was one of the first films I had done since COVID happened. So getting back into things with such a great start is amazing.
So Drew said he enjoyed working with you, but what was he like to work with? Was
Drew
he horrible to you?
I mean, no, he was so mean. Look at him. No, but that's a good thing that Ben thought to keep us away, because right when we met, it was like instant chemistry. Yeah. And we just had so many ideas coming too. Like we would sit there off set and we would just like, we'd come up with like improv, and it was so good to work with Ben with that too, because he was very open with our ideas as well. And I always think that's a good relationship to have with the director and all the other actors, when you can collaborate and come up with things together, because that just makes the film better. And that was how it was with Drew and Ben. We were able to, a lot of the stuff about my stepfather was improvised, and a lot of the stuff about the keychain, and it was just all, yeah, it was great. I mean, working with Drew and Ben is just a delicacy.
Tell us a bit about that, Ben. I mean, why did you want to keep them apart? I mean,
well, we're going to shoot the film in chronological order pretty much. And that journey that they go on, I mean, that journey that Jake goes on from his mum's house to Danny's place, and we feel there's some distance between the two of them, and we feel that distance close, and they get a little closer, and then it opens up again when something doesn't go the way that one of them wants it to. And then in that final scene, it really comes back together. It's quite an intimate scene in that final moments inside the car, parked up. But I wanted to feel like these two people were getting to know each other on another level again when going through this story. And so to be able to feel that in real life and shoot this in chronological order and have them form that bond on screen, it was really important.
So David is the composer, and it's a really beautiful score. Beautiful, subtle. And one of the first things I kind of noticed when a film starts, you can tell the mood it puts you in, and it has a lot to do with how the audience feel when they watch a film. So I thought it was really beautiful. And what were your thoughts behind that? I mean, when you approached this film?
Yeah, so Ben and I talked a lot about keeping that mystery of that big moment at the end alive. So we went back and forth a lot on hinting, like subtle hints at that, but we didn't want to answer the question. We didn't want to get to the end too soon. We wanted that to really build up until that last moment. And at the beginning, we really wanted to kind of emphasize the sort of innocence and kind of that journey that Jake goes through, and really starting that with I was really inspired by a lot of old Western movies. I have like a brass resonator guitar that I actually created a synth out of those sounds. So trying to put subtle hints of these little Easter eggs in the score that make you feel a certain way, but don't scream out to you in a certain, too specific of a way. But that was kind of the inspiration for the tonal palette of the film, for sure.
Did you guys just kind of talk back and forth about the mood, or how did you start on it?
We shared some references. I mean, we had cut an early version of the script with a couple of moods, but they were giving too much away. It was kind of like almost like an example of what not to do as opposed to an example of what to do.
Right.
And thankfully, but that we needed that to be able to assemble a version of the film. You kind of need to feel where the shift, how the music is going to shape that journey. And I wanted to be able to give David something like that to at least work with. And I mean, thankfully, he was able to turn around the first set of scores really quickly, and so that we'd have something to keep shaping. And it just kind of evolved from there. And like David was saying, it was a lot of taking things away.
Oren, the director of photography, is here. Oren, you're very welcome. Sorry you joined late, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your patience.
It's stunningly beautiful. The colors, the tones, They have so much to do with how you feel when you watch the film. So tell us a bit about your thoughts behind that, and how did you approach shooting this?
Well, for me, especially in the narrative space, and especially with a story like this that's so character driven, I really want the cinematography to be invisible more than anything. And I'm glad that it aesthetically resonates, because what it's pointing at is very aesthetically pleasing. The landscapes of the desert we knew would look great. The actors that are in front of the camera are doing all this heavy lifting. So my initial goal before anything is to figure out, how can I support all of this without messing it up, basically, without doing too much. And it was helpful as well to come into the project with, Ben had already had a very specific idea of what the project would look and feel like, because of the work that had been done on the previous version. So we had storyboards and we had reference images that I was immediately able to take the script and take those images that Ben had already put together and really understand very quickly what the film is and what it feels like and what it looks like.
Did you have the end result in your head when you were shooting it?
Yeah, I think the reason it feels so naturalistic is because it is. I mean, we really only had to bring in artificial lighting for very key specific interiors, like the car at the end, places where we were just dealing with no available light. Because we're shooting in a dark parking lot. But other than that, we really wanted to embrace what the environment was giving us and what the actors were giving us. And I think that was just really the underlying motivation. And color-wise, yeah, we were able to kind of tweak and enhance certain things. I think the palette was very clear. Just from the first time I tech scouted the location, and I saw that ranch with the ridge of mountains in the background, the sky above and the dirt below. It's sort of, the palette really just falls into place, and you're kind of just riffing off of what nature is giving you.
So Ben, back to you, right? You've had an interesting route to filmmaking, right? Haven't you? You didn't go to film school. I've heard you describe it as kind of taking the scenic route to filmmaking, right?
Yeah, you could definitely say it was a scenic route. I say that because it took me a little while to get to this point. But yeah, I mean, I think when I loved photography and playing around with video cameras at an early age, but it never quite fell into a place. And I guess my first love was actually music. I went to study music. When I went to college, I went to study music, and through that, kind of started designing, doing some photography for artwork for album covers and things, and then out of that kind of evolved into interactive work, animation. So it's a hybrid of disciplines, I suppose. And I guess I kind of pride myself on being able to bring lots of those disciplines together. And, because filmmaking is not just about the story, it's understanding the whole craft. It's understanding every aspect of how you can shape that film through the colors, through the framing, through the music, through the sound design. It's all related. And so I guess it was a long education in being able to bring all those elements together and find that this was really where my passion lies.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we've got some questions from journalists here that we'll go through, and Jenny Kermode has an interesting one. So from Jenny, thanks for the question, Jenny. So Jenny says, usually when we see stories about toxic masculinity, they're rather grim. For instance, we see boys being bullied by their fathers into behaving in certain ways. This film makes problematic and dangerous behavior seem, at least superficially, very charming. So how do you approach that and strike a balance so that you didn't tip viewers' sympathies the wrong way?
I mean, I think it's easy with a subject like this to go to be perhaps a little heavy-handed with the aspect of that manipulation or the the negative side of those characters. But coming back to something that Drew said early on as well, you know, and we talked about this when we were talking about the script and the characters. You know, you have to understand that in Danny's eyes, it's not that he's intentionally trying to send his kid on this terrible path, or that, you know, he thinks he's doing the right thing for his son. And I think that, to me, that exposes in some ways a more kind of dangerous aspect of views of masculinity, because they're kind of unaware. You know, these people are unaware that the things, every little thing that you say and that you do has such an effect on a young, impressionable mind. And I didn't want to just make this thing where we just hate Drew and, you know, feel sorry for Jake. You have to see that there's love there as well, even though it's ultimately destructive.
Drew, what was your acting method for the film? Like, seeing as we're talking about that and what you were saying to Jake.
Whatever it was worked, because you guys have just used my name instead of the character's name, which I take as a badge of honor. Although I question my dangerous mind that you're talking about.
Drew.
No, but it's a great question. Look, for me, it's always about, you know, who is this guy? Who is he to me? Who is he to the people he interacts with in the script? Like I said before, that this is a character that I've really wanted to play. I mean, I've played bad guys, I've played good guys. This is, you know, they're always more interesting to me when they're complex. And that's my goal with Danny. So it was, that's why, you know, what I said before about, you know, connecting with Kingston, because I think, look, anytime you have another actor in a scene with you, the chemistry is going to play a factor, whether it's good or bad. And particularly with young actors, you know, it can be a real wild card, in my experience. And I've been really lucky most of my career, but with Kingston, it was, I just felt like we really hit the jackpot, because for someone that's only, is it 3 years now you've been doing this, buddy? I mean, not long. The guy's got just so much ability, and that made it a lot easier. And also being a dad, I'm a dad. My son's 10, and although he's about the size of Kingston, he's a giant. I don't know where he gets it from, but this story as a dad of a soon-to-be teenager, you know, resonated in a way that it wouldn't have before. So all of that played into the final portrayal, I think.
So much of what we see and learn is through visual subtleties rather than heavy dialogue, etc. So how aware were you of planning the narrative structure to a set time? Ben, do you want, or James, do you want to?
Well, actually, that's interesting, because the original script, it was very wordy. And then when Ben came on board and we worked on it together, he was very much about sort of like, you know, not saying things when we could show those things instead. And I know it's that whole old adage of, you know, show don't tell, but I think, you know, you can easily end up sort of falling foul of that when you're writing something. It takes another pair of eyes to look at that and say, well, particularly like a director's pair of eyes, or somebody who can see things visually or more cinematically, and say, well, actually, we don't really need to say that. He doesn't need to respond verbally there. He can respond kind of with a look or with this and with that. So Ben really helped to kind of like pare that script down to its kind of like more essential details. And then, you know, and then measure that out with a lot of unspoken gestures and, you know, glances and things like that.
Additionally to that as well, you know, the other thing that kind of evolved a lot from the initial version of the story, which really all took place with the two characters just in the car talking, was to see a little more of their lives, see a little more of their worlds, and establish also that Kingston, or that Jake, lives between these two worlds. We don't see his mum's house, but we see him ride from this, you know, which feels like a very sort of middle-class suburban neighborhood, albeit on the edge of the desert, and take this short journey into a very different world. And, you know, visually, there's so much there in terms of understanding where he's at, you know, sort of torn between these two worlds. And that was a big part of what I really want, what I could see in the script, but wanted to kind of be able to bring out is just how can we see a little bit more about who these characters are without them having to tell us it.
It wasn't too much of a production nightmare, Annika, was it? Like to shoot it in order?
You know, it actually, it ended up working out for us, obviously. I don't think that it was a huge challenge. I mean, I will say the process obviously was really involved. Ben and I were taking a whole weekend to just drive all around LA and see all of these different spots. And it only took a little bit of cajoling with these individuals who owned these areas to get them, and, you know, being as diplomatic as possible, I will say. But that's the job of a producer, right? That's what we're here for, is to be that support system. So you know, I enjoyed the whole process. I love working on short films, and I love producing, and this just was, again, I can only say and sing these praises. Ben's a fantastic director and creator, and everybody who's here, you know, James with the writing, and Kingston and Drew, fabulous to work with. Jamie Ember, our casting director, who brought them on, who I've worked with before, amazing, and Oren too. So it takes a village, and we were able to, you know, mesh everyone together, and it worked out. So yeah.
Okay, well, I have to say, just well done, you know, for persevering and getting the film finished. And you know, I think it's interesting, the story you came, you know, how the third time, you know, lucky you got this film made, and it's probably a better film because of it. I think what you've ended up with is, you know, really a masterpiece. It's a beautiful film, and there's something in there that I think really connects with viewers. So, you know, I always make a list every year of you know, the films that I think, you know, deserve a place on the short list, and this is definitely one of them. This is the first one I put on. So I wish you all the best of luck with it. And I really hope to see it there. So thanks so much to all of you for coming in to chat, and thanks to everybody who joined us for the chat. It's been really great having you, and very best of luck with it.
Thanks, Vincent. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, man.